just sit there, bask in the euphoria. Thank you so much, Canadian Film Festival!
Hi, everyone. I'm Jen Pogue. I am the Canadian Film Fest Industry Series producer. Welcome to our final panel for Canadian Film Fest Virtual Edition 2020. Before we get into it, I would like to reiterate a statement we put out a couple days ago. Canadian Film Fest stands in solidarity with our BIPOC friends and colleagues in our commitment to anti-racism. We promise to continue to do our part to ensure we lift up BIPOC voices both within our organization and in the stories that we spotlight. We believe that Canada has more than one voice, and we want to continue to offer our platform to share with all Canadian content creators in an effort to tell your stories. We hope ultimately that the information the CFF provides in our industry series helps not only the Canadian filmmaker, but the BIPOC filmmaker, their projects, and those that continue to seek the tools to succeed in our industry. It is in this spirit that we are continuing this dialogue, as well as taking time to learn and reflect on our own actions within our organization and beyond. We are here today to learn about the importance of efficiently preparing for your post-production. It's a vital role in getting our stories to the big or little screen, and often it's overlooked in prep. So this is so important that we talk about this today. Thank you so much to our incredible panelists who are here to share their expertise. Our industry series would not be possible without our incredible sponsors. So big thanks to Super Channel, the Distillery Restaurants, Retake Furniture Rental, Ontario Creates, and an extra special thanks today to today's main sponsors, Red Lab and Pivotal Post. Yeah. We will be taking audience questions throughout this conversation, so please feel free to write your questions in the comment sections on our Facebook and YouTube streams. Our team will be fielding them and sending them over to our moderator, Lauren. I'm so pleased to introduce Lauren. Lauren Grant of Clique Pictures is a multi-award-winning producer. Some of her many credits include Riot Girls, Wet Bum, Picture Day. And your documentary On the Line just took home 2 Canadian Screen Awards last week, Lauren? Is that right?
Yeah, for editing.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Editing and directing.
That's incredible. Yeah, congratulations. So without further ado, I will let you take the floor and please introduce us to our awesome panelists.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for having me. Thank you for sharing your mission statement. I think it's really important. We have so many great people to talk about post-production. I think it's sometimes the forgotten, under-budgeted thing that is so, so important. I've definitely done my share of post-supervising when I first started in this business, and I think it's very important to sort of get the full scope of all that's possible so that you can make your movie, you can sell it places, you can screen at film festivals, and you actually have the things that everyone needs. So I'm gonna just introduce everyone by name, and then I'm gonna get everybody to start this off with something super positive about what was one of your aha moments, something that just clicked for you on a project, career-wise, one positive thing that sort of changed your outlook. So our panel is composed of Kat Weber, an amazing editor, director herself. She is the editor of Hazy Little Thing, which is also screened at the festival. We have Jane Tattersall, an amazing, amazing, amazing sound designer, sound editor. She is such an invaluable resource. I'm very excited that you're here. We have Justin McConnell from the project Unstable Ground, and director, your name is cut off in your intro. So
I'm from Unstable Ground, and my project is Clapboard Jungle.
It's Clapboard ... for me.
Yeah, it's not. Justin is just not unstable. He is exactly. Unstable Ground.
Yes. Justin's going to talk about his project, his festival, as well as the whole filmmaking and post-production process. We have Brendan Carmody, who will also be from Pivotal Post. And we have Janelle Bechthold, who is an amazing composer, and we'll also talk about that, as well as Warren Sonoda, director, post-supervisor, editor. I'm not sure what you can't do, Warren. So if that's your aha moment, that you realize there's something you don't know, I think we'd all feel a little better if we knew your secret one thing you can't do. But let's start with Kat, something that, an aha moment for you, career-wise, project-wise, something that kind of clicked.
Yeah, I think in general, the aha moments can be divided into kind of like creative technical and business for me. And overall, the one arcing thing is collaboration. That has been just the key to everything in my career, from my work as a director to my work as an editor, is just, and also coming up, having gone to acting school, it's always been me creating things with my friends. And just that joy of creation and finding people that have similar interests and tastes is just so crazy to think that those friendships started led me to where I am now. And yeah, so I think finding your people and always being a collaborator is my aha moment.
Cool. Justin, something from you?
Mine isn't really the opposite of hers. Collaboration is really important, but I came up in the early 2000s at a bunch of post facilities, and I got into post as a way to get into making my own films, because I figured with the way the tech was going and the how much more affordable it was becoming for everything, the more I knew as a jack of all trades, the better I could pull off productions at a low budget, because I had no money and I was self-financing almost everything I made, from music videos. Well, music videos were clients, so they paid, but you know, short films, my first few features, pretty much everything up to Life Changer has either come out of my pocket or the tiniest of investments from friends or family. And in order to pull that off, I've kind of had to get really, really good at meeting QC requirements and delivering masters, and that's built my company Unstable Ground up to the point where I now do service Blu-ray and DVD authoring, trailer editing, captioning, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, for a bunch of clients. So that keeps me alive while I make these indie films. So for me, the aha moment was kind of going, okay, I need to learn to do as much of this as I can myself, because I can't afford to go to these bigger facilities in these early days. And that sort of built into where I am now. And I think self-efficiency was the big aha moment. And then collaboration gradually came more and more and more and more as my career built.
Yeah, no, I think that's really going to be really valuable insight. I think there's something interesting with changing technology over the last, 15, 20 years that has really allowed people to make their own projects all along.
Look at this panel. It's because of technology.
Yeah, I know the technology, but also the idea that you can make your film, but you do still have to figure out about that audience, and post-production being so vital to like make the leap of how can people actually screen this. So yeah, how about you, Brendan? Your aha
moment. I mean, growing up in the industry, I've kind of had a lot of them, because I get to see kind of so many different gears of how the machine works. I guess the two kind of overlapping things that for me are just constantly, hammered down is prep. It's so invaluable. I mean, one extra week of prep before you shoot can make things so much easier versus trying to squeeze that week of prep into when you're already going. And the same thing goes for post, making sure you've got a good post supervisor that understands, this is the goal of the look of the picture, and this is what is required from us, from our distributors and, whoever we sold the project to, because I've seen this time and time again where people come in and not familiar with the whole process, and they, something comes up and it's like, oh crap, I didn't know I had to do that. And now these costs and stuff come out of nowhere, and your producers start to have heart attacks. And so that's a huge thing. The second one would be communication. I say it all the time, it should flow like water. There's something in the way, it should find a way around it. It should keep happening. If there's a problem, talk about it. Don't wait till the last minute, because it will be too expensive to fix. That's a huge one that I see a lot. There are some people out there that are phenomenal to work with, that it's just like that communication line's always open. I know what's going on. I know what their requirements are. And that's great. And then I guess one of the bigger kind of aha moments for me kind of on the post side would be setting up for Pompeii. That was the first time I had to do a multi-editor editorial system that was all based in 3D, and we had to have the systems run remotely, and we had a screening room down at the end of the hall that needed to connect to the different editors. And this is back when 3D was still, fairly infantile in terms of, the Avid support and things like that. So it was I remember walking in going, how are we going to do this? But we made it work, and it was kind of like, all right, cool. If you've got the right team of people, then you can really kind of put your heads together. You get like a little think tank going, and it's like, all right, this is what we need to do. How do we get there? And, you know, people will chime in with stuff. You're like, oh, I would have never thought to try that, or I'd never known that existed as an option. So that's kind of cool. So yeah, prep, communication, teamwork, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, it's most certainly the most collaborative. You know, it is the film business, but it's on the business side, but it's also so collaborative. We can't do this all alone, although maybe Justin or others can talk about that. Maybe you can, but I think eventually you want to interact with other people. So Jane, do you want to talk about yours? I'm sure you have had such a range of experience of budget size and projects, and I would love to hear something that clicked for you that changed sort of how your process works potentially.
Well, thank you. Of course, as we all have, many aha moments, but I think the one that I found the most kind of affecting change is because I have my career started as an apprentice. As a sound editor. I was fortunate to work with some incredibly talented people, so I learned well, and I did lots of good work, and I got some good projects, and I, got some recognition for that. But it wasn't until I ran into and started working with Clement Virgo, and he asked me something, or we started to talk about the sound, and I was, sort of taking notes from him, going scene by scene, and what does he want here, what does he want there, and he kind of said, well, like, I want you to do what you want to do, and that was like a bit of a shock, because I didn't know that was part of what I could do. I didn't know that would ever be wanted. I didn't know that was part of my job. It was kind of terrifying, because I had to think about what was my opinion. What if I had a blank canvas, what would I do? Not that it's blank, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
And so that was like, it's a creative thing. It's like, oh, I can contribute something creatively. Now the director and filmmaker may not like what I do, but I'm allowed to offer it. And, that's a very kind of empowering and fun and terrifying thing to have learned.
I love
Yeah,
that.
for sure. And what about Janelle, for you? Is there something potentially similar? It's like, I think how you're becoming, I think often composers are hired near the end. Maybe they should not be, maybe you should be involved earlier, but what's an aha moment for you in the process?
Well, I think definitely in terms of my creative process, the real aha moment came when I realized that composers are probably more filmmakers and more storytellers than musicians, which might seem a little weird, but I mean, they always talk about in the filmmaking process, there's the story that you write, the story that you shoot, there's the story that you edit. But then music really helps to craft that story and help to tell, I guess, and guide the audience through the story. And so, I mean, everything I do comes from that place of being a storyteller. And even on every project, I usually try and find a thing, whether it's like a musical motif or an instrument or a unique sound, something that's going to be unique and personal to that story that really helps to tell it. So that's definitely probably like my biggest creative aha moment. But outside of that, I think for one of the moments that really helped to propel my career forward was just finding someone to champion me who recognized my work, worked with me, and then kept recommending me. That was so impactful and so powerful. And it's I think there's something to be said about showing up and doing really great work, and being just like Kat said, being a good collaborator, somebody who listens well and communicates well, and comes to the table with their ideas and really from a place of story.
For sure, yeah. And Warren, what about for you? I feel like.
Oh, I thank you very much, and Lauren, thank you for moderating today. I think in terms of moments, we're all having a moment, especially this week. It's been painful. It's been grueling. I think moments like this help some people to see what's going on. And for me, if you're asking about a filmmaking aha moment, it's kind of tied in with the moment that we're all going through right now, with Black Lives Matter, and just the systemic nature of racism itself is confronting my own biases and my own gaps and blind spots. The aha moment for me came when I realized I was going into my 11th feature film that I was going to direct, and fortunately I was able to write it. And I'd never cast a Japanese Canadian in a role before, and that's on me. That's my own personal gap. And in reaction to that, we created Things I Do for Money, which is about two Japanese cello playing brothers from Hamilton that steal a bag of money. And we didn't make it as a declaration or anything. I wanted to make a cool crime caper, but to claim that space, which is otherwise, the crime film space, and to claim it a little bit with a personal story. I echo what Janelle and Kat's been saying in terms of like, and Jane, you just said it. It's when Clement, who's amazing, the DGC is doing a masterclass very shortly with Clement, and I advise everybody to check it out. It's on Zoom. When Clement empowered you to say, "Hey, your voice matters in this," that was my aha moment, where it's your perspective, your personal prism of how you see the world is far more important than, can you get your day on time? Do you know what the lenses are? All that you can learn, but you have to take responsibility for the voice that you have. And I think, Janelle, that's what you were talking about in terms of being able to empower other people and getting that recommendation is having something very distinct to say. So that's kind of my aha moment. I don't know if it's specific to the post process, but certainly in filmmaking in general, it's been something for me. And I think the world at large right now is having a huge moment like that of realization.
Yeah, it is, and I hope it's an aha moment we can carry forward when the news cycle changes. That we can really, especially I think we have a privilege of we make movies and films and videos, and we tell stories, and how do we help support stories that maybe aren't our perspective. I think that's something interesting, because I would love to talk about the collaboration with directors and producers. I think one of, you think about Martin Scorsese, he's worked with Thelma Schumacher forever. And so there is an interesting thing of you find your people, you find your collaborators, and you move up in your business together. And I think this moment hopefully will help us question of how do we then, if we're doing that, are we just moving up with the people who look the same and think the same as us? So I thank you, Warren. I think it's really important to be constantly, I think, questioning ourselves and the stories we're telling and what we're putting in the world, and all the different parts of the post process, the filmmaking process that we all participate in.
And it's cool to meet new people. It's great. It helps everybody. It's awesome.
Yeah, well, yeah, for sure. And yes, many thoughts about that.
Yeah.
But why don't we talk a little bit about that process for everybody, and then I do want to also in this hour and a half talk about how do we get more people into post-production, into filmmaking. Post-production for sure is a very white side of the business, including in a business that is all very quite white. So how do we embrace people? How do we get them in? How do we support them? How do we champion people coming in? And we'll get to that next, but let's first start with that working. If anyone would like to talk about that collaboration, you all sort of touched on it in your answer to your aha moment, because we are not working alone in rooms by ourselves, despite currently us all being in rooms by ourselves. But yeah, what do you look for in that working relationship with the director, producer, writer? What is, if it's television, the showrunner, what is those skills that you really value when you meet with people and decide you're taking on a project?
I'll jump in first, because Kat is on my Zoom, is right beside me.
Yeah.
I loved the work that she was doing, and I think we immediately kind of really clicked in terms of what we were trying to do. I was doing a CBC Move the Week at the time for Hatching, Matching, Dispatching, and it was hilarious and it was fun. You know, you do, there's Janelle, you're talking about being recommended. You do have to be careful what you wish for, because Kat's so busy now that I can't even get her on my projects. And that's a testament to your amazing talent, Kat. But you also, you know, you empowered Anna Catley to edit my film, Things I Do for Money. And it's all that sort of help and support and encouragement that I love about the collaboration process.
I mean, what Janelle was saying about someone championing you, have always been such a champion of me. And I think that's one of the reasons that I am quite busy. So thank you so much. Yeah, I think what I look for in collaborators has a lot to do with what you were saying, Brendan, about communication. And an ease of communication.
Yeah.
And kind of it all goes down to also, Janelle, what you were saying about story. When you have a shared purpose of telling this story, I think that it allows for kind of the niceties and the like polite behaviors to kind of not have to be there anymore, and the small talk and just go right into the story. And I guess one thing I look for creators that can separate like those things from the work. And sometimes I'll disagree with a director, and having that voice, like you're saying about Jane, about being able to stand up for yourself, I think, or not stand up for yourself, but have your own voice and be able to communicate exactly what your taste is or what your vision is in your own art form. I look for people that can do that and who are able to have that discourse back and forth and encourage not just agreeing with everything and every idea, you know?
Directors want to be surprised. We
Yeah.
want you to show us something that we don't know about.
And like we're all fighting towards the same purpose. So I think that tension, when it has an ease of communication, if that tension is there, then there's that excitement and creation. If it's kind of just like nobody cares and we're just doing it, there's a little bit of tension that I like in the creative process.
I'll go a step further and say I prefer people to call me on my shit all the time. Like whatever.
You sure do, man.
And vice versa. And in pretty much every level, post or something I'm directing or something I'm producing, it's always good to have a conscientious voice who is in the same exact team as you and wants the same thing, but may come from a different angle, and it makes something better, I think, in the long run. And that's actually something I had to learn as I was more collaborative with my later projects. I mean, it's not like nobody worked on the other projects, but I had to open myself up to the idea that all these outside voices, and now I test everything. I get like 30 or 40 opinions on everything I do or more, any movie I make, anything I do, within reason, just so that I can find the truth in all the conflict, because nobody has the same answers ever. So you just find the truth in all the conflict.
Because the truth is somewhere in the middle. I
Yeah.
think that's always what you find.
Justin, what you said kind of reminds me of what my teachers told me in film school. It was, you know, when you're doing your project, don't go and show it to your mom and say, hey, what do you think? Go to somebody that's actually going to be critical and be honest and understands what you're trying to do. Because otherwise you're just, oh, okay, then it must be good. And, you know, you're selling yourself short.
Yeah, you don't want yes men or yes women or yes,
Yes,
anything
people.
else. Yes, people. Yeah, you don't. You want people who believe in the good of what you're trying to do, but at the same time, know that you can be better and will tell you that.
For sure. Well, and I think I personally always look like, as a producer, look for that in an editor and composer and all creative collaborators is it is a collaborative business, and you're also bringing your creative sense. And I once was hiring on a project, and I had this conversation with the director, and they're like, oh, I think this editor is a good fit because we like all the same movies. And I was like, actually, I think that's the exact reason why they're the wrong fit. I think actually you understand the core of what the movie we're making, but they're actually going to challenge your perspective and I think make the film better. And I have 2 films in post in this state of the world, and got to work with Christine Armstrong, and I'm working with Maureen Grant. And it's like, I love when they say, when you give a note, and we can try it. It's not about not trying ideas and all ideas can be tried, but they're like, actually, this is what I think would work better. And here, what about this? And I've been thinking about this. And those are just such a great collaborators. And Jane and Janelle on the sound and music side, I've had, Peter Chapman did Riot Girls. He was just nominated for original song for his original 80s jock jam. It brings me so much joy. And for his score, he lost to Howard Shore, as we kind of expected to happen. But yeah, I think, and he also did the documentary, and he really, I think working with composers and your sound team who can really help to elevate and are still coming back to, here's the core of the movie, but this is how you can bring your creative talent to elevate what we've already done. And I love post. I trained to be an editor at university, and then weirdly, if you edited, you had to produce, and so I fell into producing that way. But yeah, anything to now, Jane, from your perspective of that collaboration and things that make it great?
Well, certainly, I think Janelle will probably feel the same way, but we'll see what she says. Is it feeling like you're making the same film? Because sometimes you have someone who just has a different idea of what it is, and so you have to share the. It's not temperament or anything. It's just you're just moving in the same direction, and so that. Because if you're not, and then you're bringing up ideas, you just know they're going to get shot down, and then you're not as collaborative and you're not as open, and then it's just like you can do a decent job, but it's never going to be as good as it might have been.
Yeah, I would agree with that as well. I would also say that I'm looking for somebody who's brave, and I say that because music. I mean, it can be really fun, but it can also be really scary for a lot of people because it's hard to talk about something that, like, if you know nothing about it. I think coming to the table and being able to communicate and speak the same language is kind of key. And so for a lot of filmmakers, I really prefer when people talk in more emotional language, for sure, just to get their ideas across rather than musical language. The number of times I've sat there and said, yeah, okay, so you don't like the trumpet. There's no trumpet in this, but it's a process, and I want somebody who's brave and willing to work through the process with me, which might be like, yes, this isn't right now, but let's figure out what can be changed, what can be shifted, and somebody who can see the vision, because not every part of the music making process is going to sound beautiful right away, because part of that's working with musicians and we're doing recordings and things after we get the initial structure down. So I think that's definitely something I look for in a collaborator.
Yeah. Warren, do you have anything to add in your perspective from your coming on?
No, I just want to echo what Kat initially said, and Justin, it's like, I think as a filmmaker that has a post background, I have utmost respect for editors, because I used to edit all my stuff, and not only can I not do that anymore, I want that added layer of perspective. And it just, again, I want to be surprised when Kat gives me a cut, she surprises me with what she can get out of my footage, and that's the true testament of when you're working with an editor and really getting to the good stuff of the material, because I've lived with this material for like a year, and now she's surprising me with it. That's pretty cool, and it makes the whole process fun. At the same time, there's moments where it's like I have a pretty particular thing that I want to do, and I think the filmmakers out there that you also have to stick to your vision when you have something, and you're not quite getting it out of the edit. You just have to be clear, and what everyone's saying is communication. Communication's key. If you can't actually speak in terms that an actor can readily give you a performance that you're looking for. You can't do that with an editor either. You have to be able to talk in a language that they can understand why you want a slip audio edit, because I'd rather have the audio come in under the video, because it just, for me, it's a more elegant cut. You need to kind of, the directors have to educate themselves. I'm sure Justin can attest to that, where you're doing all sorts of post DCP, and it's very technical. And like, you've done my DCPs, I don't know anything about it.
And all your deliverables.
And all my deliverables.
Yeah, I think I did do them all. Yeah.
And as a director, you have to learn that. So there's a responsibility on us to be able to communicate properly.
For sure, I think it's one of those challenges I've mostly produced for features, and there is that thing where there's that balance between collaboration, I find, with directors and all their key creatives on set, but also in post, where you want everyone to be bringing their ideas, but you also have to really hold what the core of your movie is, so that you can say, when you as the director, your idea, you're going to say no to someone else's suggestion, that and then also be aware when someone else's idea elevates what that core is. I think you kind of have to always come back to what is the movie and what is the story you're telling.
Sorry.
No, go ahead.
There's a great quote, and I don't know who it's attributed to, but it's, "If 1,000 people tell you you're dead, lay down," which is a really great way of basically saying that if you farm out for outside opinion and enough people say the same opinion, there might be something there to listen to. Yeah.
Or I find in post, especially, I don't know, Kat, how you feel about this, is like, you might get 10 ideas of how to fix a problem, and maybe those ideas don't work, but they're all talking about the same part of your edit. So clearly there is a problem there, even though the solutions provided might not be the right one. I always say that to, my producing partners and directors and editors. It's like, well, everyone got stuck here. Everyone bumped here and gave a note, and they gave, 10 different ideas. But what's the problem, and how do we want to fix it in the core of our story?
Yeah, and sometimes when people get bumped, you're like, oh, is it something in the sound design and not the cut? Is it something because sometimes people will be like, oh, that cut doesn't feel right. And then I look and I'm like, oh, there's this weird sound thing here. Of course they bumped, like I missed that. I misplaced that thing, or it's just.
What's the note behind the note?
What's the note behind the note is so true. That is so true. And especially in stylized editing, like the one thing about narrative is we can always go back to the script when we're confused. We really have that. But in style editing, it's like sometimes there's unlimited possibilities of how a cut can go. And so, like you said, there could be so many possibilities. There is no right edit, but there's the one that works. You make, the one that works. Yeah. And there could be other ways that it would work, but you have to make decisions. You really do.
And I think there's a generational thing now too, with edit pacing and how things actually come across to different audiences, especially in the YouTube generation, because a lot of those creators are editing at very abstract and not traditional pacing. And you're seeing that actually move into movies and TV now. So, well, I like a slower edit and a slower burn. And I'm a student of 70s cinema and 80s, older even. I might like that. The audience might be going, well, this is fucking slow. And it's a lot of, sorry, are we allowed to swear?
You can right now.
Okay.
You just
Anyway,
live. You're right.
Sorry, students.
But
But they might because they're used to watching somebody talk at them directly at a screen, where every 3 syllables they're cutting to a new, and it changes the language of film entirely. So some of that might literally be you're bumping against somebody's perception of what film is now because it's changed.
I have an aha moment after you said that. A mentor once told me, a good editor, it's not about knowing when to cut, it's about knowing when not to cut. And I think that is really powerful aha moment.
Yeah.
You just reminded me of
It's
that.
a whole other discussion, but
Yeah.
yes.
I want to jump. We do have a question from our audience here. It's for Kat. In your Q&A last night for Hazy Little Thing, you talked about the importance of going into filmmaking with 3 scripts in mind: the writer's version, the one you shoot, and the one that edit, which Janelle touched on as well. I think there might be a 4th version, the one you actually sound design and do music for. But can you expand on this today? And because it really resonated, your conversation yesterday.
Okay, yeah, for sure. I think that and I bet Warren is probably amazing to speak to this too, but you know, you have the script that is written, whether you're the writer or the director reading that script, you've definitely gone through a whole process of drafting it and making changes and discussing whether you're the writer director yourself or two separate people, kind of that tension going back and forth. So then you have the script, you shortlist the script, break it out, the 80s schedules it, there's, you know, and then you get there on the day and it's like, oh man, I lost all my B-roll, or oh man, like this
Can't
thing,
shoot at this location.
literally, like my location is now flooding from the roof, which happened to me one time, you know. So it's like you have to adapt, and sometimes, or you'll be like, you know what, hearing that in that actor's mouth, that just doesn't, it's not right. Or an actor will, like, you'll have a crazy actor that can just like give a, like when I was working on Warren's film, there can these amazing comedians, and like sometimes they would just like go off script on one punchline or something like that, you know. So that's the script you shoot, is all of that you can't control. You can,
But we were also cutting for network television, right? So we had very specific act breaks. And yeah.
And then once all of that happens, as an editor, you know, I've had experiences where I'm on set and I kind of see all that happen. So I'm coming in with a little bit more of intelligence of what the changes are. But most of the time you're not on set. You have a conversation with the director, but usually at the time that you're getting the footage, the director's like, I need like to sleep, and I need some distance, you know, this kind of, and I think that's really healthy as a director.
Yeah. That's why script supervisors are so important.
Yeah, script supervisors.
Yeah.
And then the editor gets there with the notes of what was changed from the script supervisor and the footage. And then it's a whole process of, you know, you thought that would work like that, but it actually doesn't. It actually maybe works better like this. Or one thing like Warren taught me, which was another aha moment, he was like, the punchline plays in the wide a lot of the time, until sometimes it doesn't, but most of the time, you know. And so I presented something that wasn't like that, and then just by making that one choice, like the laugh is like, you feel the laugh, and that's, yeah. So I think that's hopefully more of an exploration. I don't know if anyone
So
has anything
you
else.
mean the idea that a film's written 3 times, once as a script, once in production, and once in post-production, basically?
Yeah, and it's written once, but I think that it evolves.
It's retold.
Yeah.
It's retold, yeah. So there's, you know, it ends up being its own different thing after those 3 different steps. And then it might, in fact, evolve beyond that with the color and sound and VFX, because, you know, the one you edit, if it doesn't have the VFX in it, as we saw with Hazy, like, I didn't know really what the VFX was going to be like. It changes in its own way, you know.
Yeah. So
I'm
I think,
actually glad that Kat brought up the VFX, because that's something that people forget about a lot.
Yeah.
And that's usually the first thing to go when they start cutting down the budget of post. And so if you're, like Kat was saying, you know, you're not on set, you're not always completely aware of the changes that are being made. Now you've got this shot that's a little bit different than you've expected, and there's no money for the VFX to make it work the way it is. Now she's sitting there going, okay, how do I somehow still tell the same story?
yeah. No, it's true, and it's. I think it is a challenge. The fix it in post mentality doesn't account for fix it in post with 0.
I'd like t-shirts. Sorry to interrupt, Lauren. I'd like t-shirts that says "Fix it in prep."
Yeah.
I think that would help
That's great.
everybody. It'll help the editors, the sound designers, the composers, the deliverables. If we just take more time in prep, we're in a quarantine right now, and if you're prepping your movie, use this time to like make sure you got all your stuff accounted for. Because if we can deal with it while we're prepping it, those things that you're talking about, Brendan, it's a lot of them we can avoid.
The movie's made in pre-production, basically.
Yeah. Well, no, I what Jane does with sound and what Jane does with music, I love it when we hand it over to you and then I get the soundscapes back. That's
I agree
really
there.
comes.
A movie doesn't feel like a movie until the sound design and the music and the color grade is done, then it feels real. What I meant is basically, you know, without proper pre-production, like you've said, you're screwed. You're you don't have a plan, and then you don't have a contingency plan, and then you don't have a contingency plan on top of that contingency plan, and you're just, you're floundering.
especially when we're talking to the Canadian Film Fest audience, which a lot of them are independent filmmakers. You know, you might be doing your first film, you might be doing shorts, you might be on your second film or whatever, but there's never money to deal with that.
Yeah.
One
And
of the things
it's okay to
that's
fly
probably,
by the seat of your pants,
got some-
but you don't want to make a habit out of doing that. You just avoid it.
I guess it would be really great for an audience to know, like, what can you fix in post and what can't you fix in post? Because recently there was a television series we worked on which was shot under the Gardiner Expressway, which is like the worst place you could possibly shoot for sound. And no one, like not a single person on the set seemed to have noticed or made a comment. Even the sound recordist didn't say anything. and he's a really good sound recordist. And then when we got to the post, and it took a long time, but we actually did fix a lot of it. We did a little bit of ADR, but we fixed a lot of it because the tools that are around are they're just so detailed and sophisticated now. But the point really is, and I know visually it was great, is like it was a terrible use of time in post to just get reasonable sound. It wasn't even great sound, but reasonable. So do you really want to spend 4 hours of your mix? Like, that's expensive time. Do you really want to spend 4 hours getting rid of the noise from the Gardiner Expressway?
It's true. It really does. You're so right. I think it's so interesting how, again, when we talk about collaboration, it's like everyone's voice matters, and you're also hiring professionals. Like on a film I have in post, we looked at one location right by the Gardiner, and on the first scout, me and the producer were like, we can't shoot here. Like we don't have the time to fix this later, even if it's possible. Like, we need to find a different location. We're like, this is actually a dialogue scene early in a movie that's setting up some plot. Like, this is actually one of the exposition scenes. Like, this is not hello, and we can, if you ADR the one line, like, it's gonna be a disaster. So yeah, it's like, bring your sound person on. Whenever
What
I'm
an amazing producer you are.
Yeah, you're a responsible producer, Lauren, because there's never a
Fantastic.
sound recordist on a location scout, and that's a detriment to spending money later on. It's hard to get them. It's hard to get them out.
It is. This is my weird secret thing at UBC again. If you were the editor, you were the producer, but you actually I talked about this in a Skillshare with Coral and Dan Beckerman a few weeks ago. You were the location sound person. So I weirdly did that. I don't hire me. I don't think I'm good now, but many years ago I did that. But I also shoot documentaries where it really can be out of your control. So we're always trying to figure that out. I shot a documentary all in India, and I remember talking to the sound person who was amazing, and he would always be so worried, they didn't interview on a bus and different things, and he did an amazing job, and it was totally fine. But I remember him being like, I don't know. I'm like, yeah, but we're gonna see she's on a bus in India. At some point we have to embrace that it is going to be loud, and I am sorry you didn't do a sit down. And that was the place that the subject really opened up to camera, but that was the place they felt comfortable. So and I think those are all very good segues to my question about what is the most common mistake you see that you really wish you could like put on 10 t-shirts for new filmmakers, established filmmakers? What is that thing you see all the time? Janelle, I want to guess yours is getting hired way too late, because I feel like that happens with composing all the time. And then it's like, I need you to create a whole character mood and theme, and we've never talked about this movie before.
Right, and we only have 2 days to do it. Yeah. Yeah, I do think that people often underestimate the amount of time it takes to really artfully craft a good score. It almost takes as much as the edit. So when you look at scheduling, yeah, that's definitely a big one. A big one I find for all filmmakers pretty well is more on the business side. There's a misconception that in order to own the copyright in your film, you also need to own the music, and that's absolutely not true. So that is one thing I come across a lot. And then the other mistake I see a lot, I don't necessarily want to call it a mistake, but it's something that is avoidable, is the falling in love with your temp track. Anyone who doesn't know a temp track, also known as temporary score, is where the filmmaker puts music into the film, which can serve a lot of great things. It can help with, you know, figuring out what overall tone of music works, what instrumentation. It can help if you have to show your film to somebody like a broadcaster or a funder, anyone who outside that might need approvals. And it can also help with the edit, you know, especially if you want to consider pacing. But oftentimes filmmakers will keep playing that same music over and over again as they do the color correction, as they look at other aspects that might not need sound or music. And then the challenge is that then that completely informs your decision. And it's not necessarily always from the point of story, and it's not always from a point of what actually works for the film. So turn it off. Once it's there, turn it off, step away from it, and definitely don't pick a song just because it reminds you of, you know, your first kiss because it was playing on the radio at the time. That is a feeling you might get from music that is not transferable to the general public, and most people won't have the same response. So just something to keep in mind there.
That's such a good one. I have had that conversation so many times, and definitely early in the assembly. One said, I don't want to give notes. It's too early in the assembly, but please don't use some of these bands. We can like, they're not even in the realm of possibility for us. These will not be songs we can get. Please don't fall in love. Take them out. What about for everyone else? I'm sure all of you have good gems of like, what? Yeah, Dustin.
Yeah, I've got one, and it's a lot to do with budgeting for post. For the scope of your project, but also budgeting for the probable chance that your film may fail QC going up the chain to iTunes or something else, and budgeting for those fixes. Because if you're using someone like Mojo or Juice or somebody to deliver your film to those platforms and edits need to be done, you're going to have to pay them to do that, or you're going to have to fix it on your end. And one way or another, if you're going to have to pay the post company for that. And even beyond that, there's all the stuff you actually need to pay for to release your film, E&O insurance, title clearance. If you're making a documentary, you might need a fair use opinion. If you need a fair use opinion, because fair dealings in Canada is different than fair use, you may need to get all of your E&O in the States instead. There's all these different things depending on what your film is that you may not realize will cost you down the line. And if you don't think about it before you start shooting and get your post deals done and make sure you have a contingency for overages and all of those things, you could find yourself unable to finish your film without going out for more investment. So a big part of it is just in your budget, don't underestimate your post. I'm in a kind of a privileged position because I run a post company. So when I make a film, I can go, well, my post is actually a little cheaper than what I would normally do if I had to go farm it out and work with, you know, Brandon's company. Not saying you're more expensive, but because I'd have to be going to a different person. It's just the way it would be. Yeah, I've seen a lot of people shoot themselves in the foot and then they have to do their deliverables a second time. And it's like, well, there's $2,000 or however much. I'm just throwing a number out. That's not my price. I'm just saying that they have to pay it again, or they, you know, or they're a really common one is closed captions fail QC because they're over 400 words per minute. And they didn't go through and actually line by line with a proper caption software. You know, if they had it done on rev.com, which is great, but frequently those are over 400 words per minute. So their closed captions fail QC, which means they have to get their captions done again or fixed, and that costs money. So it's just plan for things to screw up through the post period, just like they screw up through production, because it does happen frequently.
Yeah.
On that note, not just finishing, but one thing that in my career I've found multiple times, especially in independent projects, is that one of the first people that they lose on their team to save money is a DMT. And I've had, and you know,
Or they're multitasking. It's a AC DMT.
Yeah, multitasking, or you know, kind of like a entry level position person, and then I'll receive the footage and either it's not transcoded, like 30 days of footage, or they transcoded it with a different name than the file. So there's going to be problems down the road when we're relinking footage for color, when we're relinking to the source footage. So I mean, I think that comes from a responsibility as an editor to send out your specs and to have those conversations with producers. And when they say, we can't afford that or whatever, just kind of explaining how important it is for the entire process for post, that those, like, that's your movie, you know, those are, we have to protect that footage and those files and then be able to use them. And then I think so providing specs as an editor is really important, and having those conversations so that you're getting what you need to be able to do your job. And then having, like, I'm very lucky, I work with amazing assistants, Anna Catley, Leah Lalick, and Keisha Rose. And, you know, one of the
They're
services—
not assistants anymore,
they're
Kat.
not, they're all editors, I know. They're all amazing editors. But one thing that having an assistant, sometimes you can offer, like, we can transcode the footage, but it takes so much time, right? If you're not doing it as you're shooting it, like, all of a sudden we have 30 days or 14 days or however many days of footage, and it's—
And on bigger shows, you're paying for it. It's just not time. It's money. It costs money to transcode it. Yeah.
Now your assembly date gets pushed back, what, like 1 day for every 2 days of footage, and it's just so I think that there's like certain technical steps that sometimes when we're new and we're excited about creating something and we're just out shooting it, we end up making mistakes that then kind of haunt the entire process.
Well, important mentioning DMT too is backups, triple backups at least, making sure that the drives go to different places, making sure you back up to LTO, because the last thing you want is to lose an entire day of shooting, especially if you've spent it's a big day, well, and you can't redo it. So yeah, always at least, you know, your master drive and 2 backups, and then the different producers take those drives home at the end of each day, so that if there's a fire in one place or a car crash in another place, you've got your backup drive alive somewhere else. They don't all go to one spot at the end of the day. And then when you're done, all those backups go to different places too. You can put them in vaults, you can do whatever you want, but something to protect them.
And as an editor, I think being really clear about backups, that like, as an editor, making it clear in your spec sheet that you are not responsible for the source footage and the backups, and that you're responsible for your project and your proxies, because, you know, as an editor, we can't be responsible for the materials of every single thing that we work on. But I've gotten into situations in the past where something wasn't backed up on the production side, and either I was lucky to have it backed up, and I could always go back to my spec sheet at the bottom, which like very clearly states the responsibilities. So I think that comes back to communication too, just being really clear about in the business as well, being really clear about what is our role, like what are the expectations, even in indie filmmaking, you know, so that we can all just learn how to be accountable, reliable, and also know exactly whose position requires.
I think the editor's got to be responsible though as well for keeping their project files in a dated fashion. So if you need to go back 5 days in the edit, you can get to that project file and you haven't overwritten all that work. I think it's really important to the editor is responsible for that. Yeah.
That's the other biggest mistake is people get, as editors, right into the creative of putting together a story, but have no organization and no system. And then it's like a complete disaster.
As much as communication is important, organization is just as important.
Yeah.
As you can see by my clean table.
So Warren or Brendan or Jane, what is the most common mistake you keep seeing over and over?
Brendan, Jane, go ahead.
I was going to say, I don't think it's not a common mistake, but you know, Kat's describing, like the last thing she was just describing is a very technical and scientific kind of thing. And so she's pointing out that one of the things that's an aspect of that is that this post-production is both highly creative and highly technical, and it's that marriage of the two. And so one part that's related to that is ADR, which is dialogue replacement, automated dialogue replacement. And many filmmakers are terrified of ADR. It's like they don't want to do ADR because they consider it a failure. Like they should just be, either they love their production sound so much or they love their performance so much, they don't want to replace it with anything. But I always like to think of ADR as a wonderful tool, and it's another ingredient you can use when you're in your mix or in your sound edit. So maybe you re-record a whole bunch of lines, but you end up only using one word, and that word makes the sentence clearer. It's just like a wonderful thing, and it takes time, and it takes working with the actors, and you have to make sure the actors don't think that they screwed up too, because then their performance will never be as relaxed as it should be. But it's a kind of a magical thing when you can weave together both production and ADR, and not a single person, even the director, may not even know like where the cross is. So
For sure, and I think what you said, even your gardener story, and that I do think the tools, the technical tools that sound has now, I've often now gone into my sound spots being like, do you think you can salvage this line? We assume these are ADR, and I'm continually amazed at what sound teams can say. No, we can, let me check, but I think we can save that one. We don't know if you need it, and especially if it's an emotional scene, it's so hard to ask actors to be like, okay, you're gonna come in and do like this line from this scene that was funny, and then this really sad one, and I think that's a lot. So the tools, the technical tools that sound has, like, continue to blow me away. I was really surprised on Sugar Daddy, that's in post, how few of the lines we thought that were not going to be saved were able to be saved and were great. And then also there's always something that sound hears that you hadn't. It's like, well, there's a weird clicking under that whole line. How have you heard your movie like 500 times and not noticed? So, but the technical part, it's true. It really is a technical creative merge.
Cedar's magic, right? Those plugins are just anyway.
Hey guys, sorry to interrupt. The sky literally just started opening up and my window's open, so I'm just gonna run really quick.
While he's doing that,
pants.
while he's doing that, Lauren, I can say one thing, and this is for the filmmakers watching, and maybe the directors or the people making their first features, is the one thing I learned is, and I'm not talking about television, because television, you have to hand in your director's cut, and you only have a certain amount of time. But when you're talking about your own feature, just don't show that first cut until it's ready. And I'm talking even to the producers, and out of deference to Brendan and yourself, Lauren, even if you were asking me to show you the cut of the feature we just did together, if I was so honored to do one with you, and it's not ready, I've now learned after going through this 11 times that I just say, I'm so sorry, I need more time, even if it throws the schedule back, because you really don't get another chance of presenting it. And my only anecdote is my very first film, Ham and Cheese, we unfortunately showed Mr. Gravestock at TIFF a 2-hour cut of Ham and Cheese. And it was a learning, that was an aha moment for me. I learned never to do that again. He was very nice. He left the screening and he kind of just patted me on the shoulder. It's like, good on you. Because it's barely watchable at the 88 minutes we finally got it down
it's
to.
not that bad, man.
But I learned a valuable lesson is because I had pressure from, the team to like, we got to get into TIFF. We got to get into TIFF. I'm like, I don't think this is a TIFF movie, but okay. That film really crystallized that you don't recover from a first bad screening. At the same time, for filmmakers that are making their first films, don't get deflated or defeated after your first cut. It's supposed to be, and Kat can attest to this. The first cut is oftentimes very rough. Mm-hmm. And when I first started doing this, I'm like, oh my God, my movie, it's terrible. It's not gonna, what's gonna happen? And then, on Things I Do for Money that Kat's colleague, Anna Catley, edited, the first cut came out, and I think even Anna was kind of concerned with it because it was, long. And I watched, I'm like, the movie's in there. I see it. Now let's get to work. I
always say when I'm screening like a first cut to the director or my first assembly or something, I'm always like, this is the worst you're ever going to see it, the entire film, because every step of the way, like as you move through the process of assembly, rough cut, fine cut, like each step it's the worst you're going to see it until you put that final restripe and titles on and it's done, so it's nice to remember that.
Sorry,
go ahead. No.
Zoom is hard to not.
It is.
I prefer a bloated first cut to show to my initial team, my producers and whatever, simply because it's that idea of those conflicting views, because you start to figure out what the problem areas are outside of your own sort of perspective really early. And then by the time you're testing with an audience and you've got like, you show a 130-minute cut to 4 people, then you show an audience a 105-minute cut, that'll get you down to that 90-something minutes or whatever it is you're targeting for, a lot more efficiently, I find. But that's over several films I've figured that out. Before, it was, I would just release a long movie and it would be like, what are you doing, you fucking moron? But anyway.
You guys are so right about that, because I mean, I remember growing up way back in the day, they used to do dailies after you shoot.
Mhm.
So I remember going with my dad to Deluxe or Technicolor and seeing the stuff they'd shot and then some rough assemblies, and it was like, holy crap, this looks terrible. And then you see it again, a couple weeks later, a month later, when things have been kind of polished and some music's in there, and you're like, this is the same footage? Oh my God. So you guys are totally right. Like that first cut, don't let it scare you.
Yeah. But I feel like, I don't know, Warren, after all these years, I find, I am in post on 2 movies and we're cutting remote, and it's so weird and it's such a bizarre process right now. But like, I kind of have to remind myself, I do get to a moment, not always the first cut, because I am like smart enough to remember the first cut's going to be rough, but like there's almost like the moment right before you get to fine cut, when you've had the rough cut, you've given notes, you've talked about it with your team, you finally sent it out to funders, and you're working through everyone's notes, and there's like that low of like, oh God, can we find it? Like, did we totally ruin this? And then I just came out of this on a film, and I'm like, why don't I remember? And I talked to the other producer and the director, and we're like, this is none of our first movie. Why could we not remember that we would get to the other side? It just felt like that hill, the hill to climb of post felt so big, especially.
Go ahead.
Just especially because it's on Zoom and remote, and it's weird, and it's just not a process we're used to. But yeah.
Just like you do not remember the struggles you've had on set. Like I can remember, yeah. It's
I remember.
Like, well, you remember it, but I watch the film now as this is the document of what we want to say.
Yeah.
And like all the stuff that you go through, and like Kat saying is like, we lost the location, we can't do this. Like I forget. As a filmmaker, as a director, I invest in the story that ends up being the film.
Well, that's why the flaws get to you more, though, too, because nobody cares about the context of how that came together. They only care about what they're watching in front of you. So, none of the stories of, oh, this scene didn't work because of all this on the day. Nobody cares.
Yeah.
That's your stories for your circle and the people who are interested in making films, and that's about it.
The adage of, the funny thing on set that the crew all laughs at usually doesn't make the final cut because it's not that funny.
I remember we had something that was so funny. An actor kind of got stuck in one of our old trucks on Riot Girls, and it was so funny. It made the rap party video, and we kept thinking it would make the edit, and it made no sense. Tonally, it was like the film, it would make no sense. And we put it in once, and we're like, huh, yeah, that was just kind of a funny moment that makes no tonal sense in the context of the scene. But on set, we were like, this is hilarious. This will be the shot. It wasn't. Brendan, before we have some questions from the audiences. I have more questions, but is there your biggest tip, mistake, warning? I wish I could tell everyone on a t-shirt.
Sorry if I'm shivering, I'm a little bit wet.
It's bad out there, man. It's really, I see it. It's not good.
Yeah, there's a lot of bits inside of my truck right now. The biggest thing I would say, just kind of from what I've seen on my side of the post, is hire the best post supervisor you can and the best editor, and listen to them. My dad's ingrained this into me for a long time. Always hire people that are better than you, and then listen to them. Otherwise, why are you paying for them to be there? You're wasting your own time, you're wasting their time, you're wasting your money. And one thing that I'm seeing a lot now is productions will start up thinking, oh, I only need like an editor and an assistant. And within a month of shooting, I've now got 5 or 7 systems loaded up for them. So be realistic about what you need and the windows of opportunity, the amount of time you have to complete that. It's very rare I see, and again, I'm talking like very, bigger TV, bigger motion picture stuff. It's very rare you see 2. It's very common now to see 5, or a new trend now is one of the assistants will get a second computer. And that'll be another Avid system or Premiere, whatever it is they choose to work on. And that will be solely for data transfers or outputs or, rendering specific things, so they can continue working on assemblies or cutting or, just organizing files for the editor. Like Kat was saying, is a lot of people don't do that properly. The really good assistants, they're in there, everything is in proper bins, it's all properly labeled, it's been imported properly, they've checked aspect ratios. I can't tell you how many times I've seen problems where the DMT or the post house, whoever's doing the process that gets the drive ends up at the editorial and nobody's noticed that the aspect ratio has changed. So things like that, hiring people that care about what they do and understand the technology behind it will just save you a ton of money, a ton of time, and you'll get to keep some of your hair. And it'll make the whole process a little bit easier. And again, you know, the companies like the one I work for, Pivotal Post, this is what we specialize in. We sit down a lot with the post supervisor and the lead editor, and it's like, what do you guys need and what are you trying to do? And they'll say, oh, we want this gear, this gear, this gear. And we'll make recommendations like, yeah, that's perfect. We have a lot of other shows doing the same thing. Or, you know what would work better, that's more cost effective. Here's that solution. And then kind of Lauren, to touch on what you were talking about, is there's a very big trend, even before COVID, where things are starting to go remotely. I can't say the name of the show, but they shoot in Vancouver and they post here in Toronto. So a lot of the times the editor cannot be in the editorial. So they use things like SohoNet. We have our own proprietary streaming software, which the whoever is in a remote location can see exactly what the editor has on his system. There's even some really amazing pieces of software out there where the director can literally draw on his iPad and say, I want the VFX to come in from here, and the editor will see his notes up on the screen. And you know, take advantage of the knowledge that's out there. It'll save you a ton of time, a ton of headaches. And again, just listen to the people. If they're telling you it won't work and they've been doing it for 10 or 20 years, probably not going to work. Or
Yeah.
Scriptation and Shot Lister and Shot Designer are friends as directors for sure.
Yeah.
Oh,
I
don't
know
make your own
there's-
DCPs unless, oh, sorry, done. I was going to say, don't make your own DCPs unless you know what you're doing.
Oh yeah.
You're just going to cause yourself a big headache.
I remember the start of that trend. I was like, not interested. I'm sure I could learn. Not interested. I'm happy to pay someone to make that for me. We have a bunch of questions that I do want to dive into, but I also do want to make sure we cover enough time to answer this question about, you know, what is post-production? What do you see in our industry? How are we making it more inclusive? How are we, you know, helping to break down barriers of entry for, you know, our BIPOC colleagues, newer filmmakers, women, you know, and I'm going to make Jane answer first because you have been an amazing person in this business for a long time, and I would love to hear what you think is changing and maybe where you don't think it's changing, and we can fight for that change.
You know, it's a tough thing to do because you're drawing from a pool of people who are interested in the subject, the post-production. And if people are never exposed to post-production, then there never occurs to them in a million years to apply for a job or to shadow somebody. And so I say it needs to come from earlier down, it needs to come from like the high schools, or there's a wonderful thing called the Regent Park Film Festival, where well, I don't know what the connection is, but there's a couple of productions, like Kim's Convenience is one of them, where they make sure they have some people who hang out on set for a few weeks, and then the producer, Sandra Cunningham, she insists that they go and hang out in post-production and they come to a mix. So those people who, you know, come like maybe for a day or even just half a day, those people who are from communities that don't get exposure to post-production, they walk away going, oh my God, I didn't know this existed. So that's the kind of thing that we need to have more of, because if people are drawn to post-production or they're not. Like, it's a very detailed job. It's sometimes behind the scenes, you don't get the same recognition as like the directors and the producers and so on, actors for sure. But it's like fantastically creative and rewarding area to work in. And anyone who comes in from any other community is either going to either like it or not. And so it's up to us to open the door to the people who actually are interested. So let's create a bigger pool, and those people who want to work in post-production, they should just go and work post-production. It's awesome.
Yeah, I think that's so valuable. I've been thinking a lot this week about the idea that we feel often when we have, from our positions of privilege, that we feel like our door is open. But does it actually feel open to the people we think it's open to? And figuring out how to reach those communities and do the work on our side to be like, you might not think my door is open, but it is. And I think for posts, that's something that's so important. So yeah, I'd love to hear from anyone else. Yeah, Warren.
There is a fantastic site called filmincolor.ca that is just starting to capture the very amazing, talented, diverse BIPOC voices that are out there, and it's all crew. And we're hoping that it's crew members, filmmakers, editors, and you can sign up there. And it's a handy tool for all of us to kind of look at to see, when we're crewing up and we're looking for talent to see it. It's part of there's a great organization. I'm wearing the t-shirt, BIPOC TV and Film, that everybody should just check out and join the Instagram feed and follow them, because they put out a lot of information that you're just talking about, Lauren. And it's I think it's important right now to use this moment to amplify these voices. And I know everybody that's on this Zoom panel is an ally to this, and everyone's done incredible work, and the work continues. It just doesn't stop this week when the news cycle, like you said, is over. So filmincolor.ca, if anybody wants to check it out, it's a pretty handy resource.
Maybe
one thing I've noticed on the technical side of things is when I first started the post world, for editors at least, it seemed very male centric, and I'd have to say within the last 5 years,
Brendan, the film industry, man, it's like,
but within the last 5 years, there's so many more female editors, and not just assistants anymore. Like, I used to just mainly see them as assistants, and you'd catch the occasional editor that was female, but now it's like it's so commonplace. Like, and even people of color or different races, it's not like 10 white people working in a hallway.
It is the time, though. You're right. It's the time for BIPOC voices, the lesbian, gay, transgender, non-binary community to get involved and be hired. Just hire them. Just go out, find them, look at their work, hire them.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
I think one of the biggest problems for the younger generation, at least the ones that I've been talking to, is a lot of them don't know that the world is available to them. They think, oh, if my family's not involved, I can't get in. Or if some director doesn't find me sitting on a bus stop waiting, magic, that moment. It's like, no, all you need to do is call the DGC or whatever union, oversees that department that you want to join. And there's all these great, like the one thing you guys were talking about where they bring people out on set. You have like the CFC, which is another great program. But that's one thing I'm constantly telling the younger generation that are eager to come in. They're just, I don't know how to get, well, just call the union. Like, they'll tell you, here's the classes. And, like Warren was saying, reach out to someone that you like and say, hey.
And organizations like BIPOC that specifically are, is run by BIPOC voices, and they're there to help. They're there to help everyone's journey. And I think that's the other thing, Lauren, is like we all want to do this. It's hard work, but I just this week I've been brought to tears to see the support and just the absolute, the solidarity that I'm seeing is really, it's fantastic, and we need to continue beyond this news cycle.
Yes, yes, and I think the one people like us who are in the business already is really challenging. What are those systemic barriers to entry? But I think, Jane, what you're talking about is so great, and I'm such a fan of Sandra Cunningham's, and really helping people get access. Know that there are jobs here, but we can help reach for access. Janelle, I know you shared a lot of links for different ways that we can support, and different lists of crew, and obviously music, besides not having has not good representation for the BIPOC community. Women is still such a minority. I think I heard in composer organizations in the United States, it's like 1%, 2%. It's something really, really low. So yeah, how are you feeling about that? And
Well,
anyway, but yes.
Yeah,
Celebrating their one Oscar this year, but I think we can accept that that's not good enough. One is not enough.
no, no, absolutely not. And I think the interesting thing about composers specifically is that we've got all of history against us. Most of the time when people think of composers, most of us have Western classical music training, so we think of Bach, Beethoven, Mozart, like all a bunch of dudes, right? I even have a book called Bach, Beethoven, and the Boys. It's not a funny anecdote book that it's touted to be, but that just means that we have to work harder to make sure that when people who are in a position to hire are looking for composers, they see people like me or people of the BIPOC community who don't necessarily look like what you would expect a composer to look like. And that does have some, there is a responsibility of organizing people together to help, lift voices and things like that. But it also is top down. So it has to come from people who are in a position to hire to look at the talent that's available, and also look at lists of credits with an eye to, okay, if people haven't had the same opportunities as other people coming into the industry, how do those credits on a web series transfer to television? How many short films do you have to do before you're trusted with a feature film or something that's more long form? Look beyond just, I'm looking for someone who's done this exact same thing as what my project is. And also too, for other people in the industry, look at, I've recognized that not every voice is perfect for every project. So even though, I might have done a number of things, perhaps this new project, I'm not the right voice for. So who can I recommend? Who can I open a door for? And I think everyone has been in a position where they've done something and you're like, I don't think I should have done that. So now that we're all aware of what we can do as people who are already established in the industry, now I think is the time where we can open those doors and be like, come in, you're welcome. And I know I mentioned some organizations, or I sent some links. So one is the Screen Composers Guild of Canada. It's a great community, great resource. They also have a Find a Composer page. The Composer Diversity Database is a really great place, specifically if you're looking for composers of diversity, women, and people who fit into very specific identifying communities. Of course, Film and Color does have a composer section, but it's very, very small. So composers, you have to go and join.
Let's sign up.
Yes, go sign up. And then I think I met, the Alliance for Women Film Composers. That's an organization that's US centric, but they're working on diversity from the top down. So looking at Hollywood and looking at how that will help visibility. So they also have a database as well.
Just on that, sorry to jump in, Lauren, but Janelle, with the screen music supervisors, there's a union as well, right? Or association as well. And I just want to but pay my respects to David Heyman. His GoFundMe is still active, I believe, and he's a loss to this industry and the music side of things, especially. He was a phenomenal supervisor, just did Utopia Falls and Textuality with me way back in the day. So respects to David Heyman. Check out his GoFundMe. Don't mean to bring it down, but that's our community, right? And when we lose someone like that, it affects all of us. But all those places you mentioned, amazing places to follow, check out, join.
Yeah, I would say also today, Free the Work, which is working for female and BIPOC directors in the United States. They posted a bunch of Instagram posts today about different networks, distributors, organizations, all run by the BIPOC community, which obviously one of the big ones being Array. which is Ava DuVernay's amazing distribution company. So it's a great resource as well. They posted a bunch of links today on Instagram. I'm going to also jump to some questions. There's a range of them. So how do you, sort of segueing a little bit from this about how we open the door for more community, people are wondering, how do they approach you? How does a producer, a filmmaker, director approach any of you? Do you work independently? Do you work in your post facilities? How's the best way to reach out for consideration, and what does that look like for all of you?
Well, I mean, I live in public, basically, if that makes any sense. I have social media pages. I have the unstableground.net website. Anyone can reach out to me pretty easily, is what I think the way I would phrase that. And anyone is I'm more than willing to talk to anybody. The only thing that I would put a caveat on that is I get flooded with stuff all the time for various different reasons. And please don't take it personally if I don't necessarily get to or give you the full amount of time you think you deserve. It's not anything personal. It's just I've got my own stuff I have to do and my own clients and my own work, and may not necessarily gel at that given time. And I apologize in advance if you feel slighted by that, but it's not intentional. It's never intentional. So the door is open, but it's a lot of people trying to get it through a door, and I'm a nobody. So imagine somebody how much stuff people are trying to get through their door, if that makes sense.
Yeah, Jane and Brenda, do you want to talk about what it's like when how people reach out to both of you?
I'll let Jane start.
Anybody can contact me. I actually prefer email, because if I get communications from like Facebook and Instagram plus email, then I actually can't keep track of them all. But if anybody can send me an email, it may take me a couple of weeks to get back to you, but I will always get back to you. One of the things that one of my business partners said years ago, because he used to get calls from people, like phone calls, and he would say, like somebody would call and ask for an opportunity, and then they'd call back, and then they'd call back a third time, and he'd say to them, you know what, I'm going to give you, I'm going to talk to you because you called 3 times, and that means you really want this. And if somebody's only going to call once, then I don't think they want it that badly. And I was kind of like, I to this day remain a little struck by that, because I think I was always remain pretty shy. And if someone hasn't contacted me after I've left one message, I'm probably not going to call again. But there is an aspect to that which is true. If you really want something, if you really want to get through to someone, you might have to try a little harder. So anyway, but email for me.
Respectfully, though. don't be.
Yeah, please.
Don't be a stalker. Yeah. In terms of Pivotal Post, we have a website, pivotalpost.com. You can reach us there. You can reach me, Brendan, my name on the screen, at Pivotal Post. And we're more than happy to, speak to anybody regarding whatever sort of editorial needs they have. There's a little shout out for everybody. But yeah, we have worldwide services. We're in LA, New York, Atlanta, Toronto, Vancouver, London, New Zealand. So, and irregardless of the size of your production, by all means, if you guys need help with something, email me or call us and just say, hey, this is how much I got. This is what I need. Can you help me out? And we're all about supporting people. And if we can do it, we're going to do it. And, we're more than happy to be a part of this amazing community that, like you all said so many times, is if we're not bringing each other up and we're not supporting the ones that are eager and hungry and, dying to get into this industry, then it's our fault if it doesn't get any better.
Yeah. And Kat, what about you? You have an agent, don't you? Is that the best process to approach, or do you like when people approach you direct, or depends if they know you?
It really depends on what they're approaching with. I mean, to what Jane said about the 3 times, I've had a lot of people reach out to me after editing some Drake videos, and so that got like a lot of young people, and sometimes my Instagram would get flooded, but I try to answer back as much as I can. If it's about a job narrative, I'm repped by Vanguard, Amy at Vanguard, and music video commercial, I'm repped by Pop Rock. So for jobs, going through those guys is preferred. And then if it's advice, my Instagram is @catweber_. I usually find like the advice ones are easier there. And then if it's looking for shadow opportunities or anything like that, sometimes, like Jane said, like I have to hear it a few more times just because, like you said, you have your work and whatever. But one of my closest coworkers now, Leah Lalick, she actually reached out to me for coffee. I was super busy. I don't even think I ended up getting back to her. Then volunteered on my set as a PA.
I was gonna say, this is pre-COVID, right?
Oh yeah.
You just had coffee like last week.
This is like this is
Right.
when I first started working with.
Yeah.
So years ago, and showed up to my set as a PA and then ended up becoming my assistant. Like my assistant in both editing and directing, and we've flown to LA together and stuff. So I wasn't even looking for anything. And then she came in as an intern. And like sometimes people just make themselves so useful that you actually just can't get, like you can't not have them. And I think that's the one thing that people can do is just like, when I first was an intern, I went to all the other assistants at the post house and I was like, what's the one job you hate doing? I'll start there. And they said elements, which is like sending all the drives back to the different houses. And, it's kind of like very just paperwork or whatever, but that's what I started doing. So I think instead of being like, how can I get where you are, a good in is just like, okay, what can I do that you don't want to do anymore?
That's
And then
cool.
That's smart. Yeah. And Janelle, what's the best way, like, how do you get sent projects? Is it word of mouth? Is it people you know?
It's mostly word of mouth or people that I've worked with come back many times. I'm always happy to hear from people who are just starting out to people who are well established. Marcando Music, either email, or I'm also on all the socials. Janelle Music is my handle. So what I love when people are ready to talk about music is knowing more about the project. Just like not every project's the same. So just saying, hey, I have a short film and this much money, can you do it? It's like, well, what do you need? What, it's be prepared to start a larger conversation for sure.
Oh, I should add one more tiny thing shamelessly, is that if you want to learn more about how to like really get in, I guess, talking to me, watch the movie that CFF's playing tonight.
Yes.
You'll probably be able to stalk me to my apartment.
Yeah. You can figure out on Google Maps
yeah, exactly.
That intersection is.
It's all hidden in there.
I'm not sure we're going to promote stalking.
Yes.
Oh, I'm not promoting it. I'm not saying do it. I'm just saying.
We almost have to wrap up, but we do have a couple more questions. So maybe we'll just get like only one or two of you to answer each, so we can hit both the questions for everybody. How often do you find you have to reshoot and add scenes after watching your first cut? And is this something you budget for in prep? I wish I budgeted for all the time. Once Don Carmody spoke to me at TIFF Studio and said, always budget for reshoots. I make small movies and I don't always have the money, but I have reshot on most of my films, but not all of them. But what?
I think when you're first starting out, you think that's a badge of shame that you've done something wrong, and it's not. You're, like you said, Kat, there, you keep retelling the story, and sometimes in the edit or during the post process you realize, oh, we're missing an entire scene that we really need. So I've done pickups. I've done a lot of pickups. I don't know, usually if I need to reshoot a scene, that just means I can get rid of it. But you should not, as a filmmaker, you should not be afraid of it. And I don't know, I can't speak to the editing side of if you like when that happens, but I think it's a good thing. I think you need to lean into it. It's not a problem. It's an advantage for you as a filmmaker.
Yeah, and then we have another question I think is really valid, and I do want to echo something Maureen you said about showing cuts too early. I'm a big believer in not, and I've done it, but not showing don't make your edits schedule around a festival deadline. So the question here is, have you ever had to show a rough cut without your visual effects, and how do you navigate through it?
I can do that, I guess. Also, because I program for Toronto After Dark, so I have it from both sides. Every time we get a rough cut without VFX, it's rather difficult to tell what the film's going to be, but you still get a general sense of how good it is. A film called Monstrum that's now on Shudder. I saw that a year and a half ago, and the monster wasn't in the movie. It's just people reacting to markers and stuff like that. And you kind of have to assume, okay, the monster's going to look good when it's done, right? And that's a difficult thing. For stuff I've shown without VFX, luckily I didn't have enough VFX shots in the film to.
Well, Life Changer is all mostly physical, right?
Yeah, it's
Which was
mostly physical.
awesome.
We had
Yeah.
18 VFX shots in the entire movie, so I knew the missing VFX wouldn't be so bad that that it would be something that would hinder the watching experience. But I don't like to show finished films because as a programmer, I know how much that tampers the actual experience for the person watching it. I just don't like doing it. So if I can avoid that in any way, shape, or form, I will. Because if you show it too early, you might shoot yourself in the foot depending on your film.
Well, I think it comes back to film festival programmers, buyers. They watch it once. Your partners who finance the film, yes, they'll watch multiple cuts. Even them, I feel like you get the most notes first time, and the next time like, yeah, cool, it got better. But it really, you have to put your best foot forward. And then back to the collaboration, choose your team where, Warren, when you're ready to show your producers or people who are in the team that it's a safe space, even when we know it's not ready. But yeah, does anyone have else? Brendan, do you have anything to add about that before we wrap up? About VFX and showing cuts without them?
The conversations I've had, usually I'm not the one that decides these kinds of things. The conversations I've seen my dad have usually it's a case-by-case basis. It depends on who's watching it and what the context is that they're watching it in. If you're giving it to someone for sales, I would probably suggest against doing that. Because like you said earlier, and Warren touched on, some people are only going to see it once. So, and again, they might not have that eye that Justin's talking about where it's like, oh, that monster will be good, so I can ignore those markers. So it really depends. I think discuss with your producers, discuss with your post supervisor, your director, and make sure it's kind of an agreed upon jointly kind of decision.
I guess.
Oh, do you have another question, or I just have one thing, and it has nothing to do with the VFX rough cut question you had, but one thing that was just on my mind is, and I'll do it from a directing perspective, but it easily can relate to post-production is, and because everyone was talking about how can people get a hold of you and how can they talk to you, which I firmly believe in, because this is an apprenticeship arc. You're either actually doing the thing or you're talking to other people that have done the thing to learn how to do it, and then you have to eventually go and do it. But when I do meet with filmmakers, and let's face it, most of them are emerging filmmakers, new filmmakers that are starting out. One of the questions I ask them, and it's not to put them on the spot, but it's to really crystallize what everybody on this panel has done with their life, is I ask them to name 10 Canadian film directors. And they name my name, Wayne Sonoma, which is, and then I'm like, you can't count me. Name me 10 Canadian filmmakers. I'm like, okay, well, name 5. Well, name 3, and then you can get into the Cronenbergs and the Sarah Paulis and the Patricia Rozmas. But one thing when you are approaching anybody is just to invest in knowing who everybody is, and when I started knowing about Canadian film, that's when I became part of the fabric of it. And not that I can name 10 Canadian directors, I could probably name 250 right now. And I probably had coffee with half of them. That's the investment, I think, once you get into this, and probably same for editors, right? Kat, is like, the editors that are out there. I know, and you're friends with them.
And you get jobs from them because
and you get, and it helps. It like you said, Brendan, it just rises everyone's ships as the tide comes in, and the investment that we put into this, I would love this next wave to also have that curiosity, because if we don't know our movies, if we actually don't see our films, I was at Wet Bum. I was there and I loved it, and I'm glad I was able to experience it in the theatrical setting. Life Changer, Hazy Little Thing. These are important things that we need to do as a community, and editors and post-production, it's a big part of it too.
And it can be hard because we're locked away in our
small little dark rooms.
There's a really good point there, though, Warren, that I think really needs to be covered for younger people coming in, is that there's this this sort of pull right now to also be a critic while you're a filmmaker. And the biggest mistake I see a lot of young people make is they'll meet somebody who's further ahead in the game and that can help them, and then insult them either to their face or behind their back or online, or, you know, that was a shitty film, blah, 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 blah. I'm not saying this is a personal experience thing, but I have run into it, but it's more just, if you actually want to be an ally or collaborate or something like that, don't tear apart the thing you want to collaborate with, because it doesn't help you in any way, shape, or form.
I believe we need a critical community, and it's unfortunate all the newspapers are shedding their cinema critics. We need them. Just like you want someone to call you on your shit.
Yep.
I need that for the work that we do.
Well, we need critics, but
when I meet a filmmaker and all they have is complaints about the Canadian film industry, it's like, what are you doing to change it then? Help us.
Exactly.
Let's all work together.
Be part of the solution, not part of the problem.
Absolutely. We've all made films and are like, I can attest, I made 167 music videos. Not all of them are good. You know?
Well, I fully admit I've made crap in the past.
Yeah.
Not all of it, but some of it was crap.
We can all be better.
Well, I really want to thank you for everybody watching. If you have more questions, if you leave notes on our Facebook page, we will try to answer them. And I really think, Warren, that's a great note to end on. Everyone here on this panel is generously given their time today, and you can find out what everyone has made. Everyone has websites, IMDb, you can find out. So if you're interested in working with somebody on this panel, I am a big believer into your homework. The amount of emails I have received saying I love your work, and then it is pitching me the exact opposite of something I would ever produce is always a little bit of I'm so sorry I can't give you the time, because you didn't even take the time to figure out if you like my work. You don't have to love all my movies, but everyone here has done such amazing work and are easy to reach in different ways. And thank you so much to the Canadian Film Festival for having me. It's my first time moderating. It's a little different than when I said yes and we were all going to be in person many moons ago, but thank you very much for having us. And thank you everyone for your generous information. I think I've made all the mistakes you've mentioned, and I will try to not on the next one.
I know, right? I'm like, why didn't we have this panel like years ago so that I could have not made all the mistakes that you guys just mentioned in my filmmaking adventures as well. Thank you so much. Thanks, guys. We could have kept going for another couple hours, but I'll let you all take a bathroom break now.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, it was awesome. For those who are watching, that's it for our industry series for CFF 2020 virtual edition. Please feel free to get in touch with us at any time. Like, we do this for you guys, for the people who are out there who want to tell stories. Oh, he's come.
You've done so good.
We're in the same house.
No.
You've done so good.
Oh, that was shocking.
Teleportation happens.
Yeah, okay. We do this for you guys. We want to hear what you want to learn about. Please get in touch with us at any time. You can message us on the Facebook's Canadian Film Fest Facebook socials. You can message me. You can message Warren, who's on our board of directors and also in my dining room right now. And please tune in tonight at 9 p.m. on Super Channel, because we're playing Justin's film Clapboard Jungle, which I'm so excited to see, and it's preceded by the short film Blue in Hollywood. So we got a great lineup, and we got a whole day stacked tomorrow too, so we're not going away just yet.
Can we end on a shared aha moment?
Yeah.
Okay. Take on me.
Yes.
Take on me. Okay, I already done.
And on that note, see you guys later.
Bye.
Dance out.
Hello, my name is Wendy Potonsky, and I'm the managing partner and owner of Retake Furniture Rentals. Retake is once again a proud supporter of the Canadian Film Festival and is working to contribute to the Canadian film and TV industry by making it an easy and sustainable place to do business. Retake understands the importance of set design and the dynamic nature of the film and TV industry, which is why we created a company to specifically support Canadian filmmakers. Retake provides sustainable short and long-term furniture rental options to meet production schedules and product needs. Our in-house upholstery services can tailor our product to meet your set design requirements and match your color schemes. We use sustainable approaches to minimize product going to landfill when you no longer need the furniture on your set. Retake can also assist you in setting up your office with sustainable alternatives to keep your team working safely as we all head back to work during this unprecedented time. Our goal is to help you create memorable sets. Stay safe, everyone, and enjoy the films and shorts at this year's Canadian Film Festival.